Welcome to Fun with Annuities, where every single week I welcome a celebrity guest expert that can help you maximize Chapter 2 of your life. Listen, learn, laugh, and love every minute of the most unique financial podcast on the planet. Let's get to it. Welcome to Fun with Annuities. I'm your host, Stan, the Annuity Man, America's annuity agent, licensed in all 50 states. I am so glad to have a repeat guest on, smart guy in the room from the American College, Mr. Steve Parrish. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad that you're back on. There's a lot that's happening in the world. Obviously, there's a lot happening with 11,000 baby boomers hitting 65. And I know your work is extensively focused on, retirees and how things work. And just to give you some kudos, last time you were on, you explained very succinctly and simply, which I love, the three phases of retirement: go, slow go, and no go. And I have people repeating that to me all the time. They'll call me up and say, I'm in go-go, but I'm afraid of slow-go, and I know I'm going to get to no-go. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But what you've done is simplify that thinking, which makes I'm able to now say, listen, there's no U-Hauls behind hearses. You're in go-go. Take advantage of it. Live your life. Travel. Do your things. Because one out of one of us, if we live long enough, are going to get to no-go. So with that being said, and that foundation established, what specifically is on your mind, Steve, that you're working on? Because we're very interested in your work and what you're doing.
Well, I think there's two things going on. One for pre-retirees, because, I deal with retirement income, but you've got to plan for it. And then also what's going on with retirees. It's interesting with the pre-retirees, with all the things going on. I think the big issue these days, Stan, is inflation's up, markets are down. I mean, that's just kind of a very simple formula where they're looking and saying, what's that mean for me? And they're looking down the road, looking at their parents or grandparents and saying they did or didn't retire successfully. Am I going to be able to retire? I think that's their big issue. And now they hear about Social Security and whether that'll be around. The other thing that occurs to me with these pre-retirees is complexity. And we always have complexity, but if you think about it, we've gone through two very different presidents, Congress switching back and forth. And so they hear these proposed laws and they're not sure whether they are law or are ones that are proposed. So they're kind of going, I don't get it. I think those are the big ones going on with them.
Sure.
And I think it's different for people that are older and retired, because with them, I think their big issue is health insurance. And I mean, you watch TV and it makes it sound like you get paid for buying Medicare, but people who are on Medicare know it's money's coming out of their pockets.
Correct.
And so they're worried about that. And just the whole idea of, am I going to run out of money, especially if they're on a fixed income and you got inflation hitting them. And then with them, it's similar to the pre-retirees, but see if this makes sense to you. Their issue with complexity is they just want their lives to be simpler. I'm of a certain age, and I've even noticed that, is simply, I work to make my money. I'm there. Do I really want to put up with all this? And I think some of it, and they might not want to admit it, is they look and think they forgot where they left their keys, or they put their phone in the refrigerator. And so they're kind of saying, it's got to be simple because I'm not sure I'm as sharp as I used to be. So that's kind of something that nags on their mind that probably wouldn't nag on a pre-retiree.
Yeah, I think that's happening to me in my life right now. And we talk about, in the world of retirement, accumulation and then decumulation. I don't really like that because it sounds negative. But in my personal life, we're going from accumulation to decumulation of stuff, and taking carloads and carloads of stuff to Goodwill and Salvation Army that we don't need anymore. But I think there's a correlation. I think as we get older, we want less, and we want it to be. I think there's a reason that people are moving into tiny houses. There's a reason that Ford just came out with a minivan that you can live out of occasionally. And I think the consumer is saying, even though we're a consumer nation, it comes to a point as you get older is I just don't know if I need all this stuff anymore. And I just did a video on, if you had more money, would it really change your life? It hit a nerve with people because I want people to think, why are we chasing returns? Why are we doing that? Why don't we have a level of income flooring? We've talked about that and guarantees in place. And if you can live off the guarantees, then my question is, why wouldn't you?
Right. And I mean, that even translates into figuring out what you do with your money, because one of the things that occurred to me is when you're pre-retirement and you're thinking about building up as much as you can, which makes sense so that you can decumulate it or whatever term you want to use.
Sure.
What are you trying to do? You're trying to maximize your return for the minimum amount of risk. And that's when you get in all the fancy stuff of modern portfolio theory and, trying to make sure you've got your risk premiums. And I can throw out all those fancy B school terms.
Sure.
But once you retire and you're actually dipping into all that, you're still trying to maximize your return for the minimum amount of risk. But what's your return? Your return isn't what you're getting on your money. Your return is what comes into your bank account monthly, because that's what you want, is money to live on.
Correct.
What's the risk? The risk is that you run out of money before you run out of oxygen. I mean, it's that kind of straightforward. Is I want this amount of money and I don't want it to run out, which is different than during the accumulation phase when you're looking at all kinds of standard deviations and those kind of things to maximize your return.
I think that people have a hard time making that transition. The fear of missing out, whatever they want to call it. My wife calls it also the scars of scarcity. A lot of us grew up with in less than wealthy environments, and now that we have money, we still have that mindset of I call it, my mom goes to the restaurant and she always tell her, instead of carpe diem with my mom, it's buy the drink, meaning that buy the Coke or tea or lemonade because you can afford it. Her comment is, yeah, but it's like $2 or $3. I'm like, you can afford it. It's okay. Buy the drink. That's scars of scarcity. How do you think the annuity industry could convey more of a lifestyle peace of mind message than getting caught in the weeds of numbers and those type of things? I really think we need to take our message down a notch from the standpoint of math to reality.
Yeah, and that's and sometimes we're our own worst enemy, because as we add all these wonderful, incredible features,
Right.
GIWB and RELAs and MIGAs and all that, they're really meant to help you, but they also confuse. One of the things that occurred to me is my wife and I are right now watching that excellent Netflix miniseries, The Crown.
Okay.
And one of the things going on is you have all these royals being very formal with each other, but the one threat that the queen keeps imposing on different people is if they don't act right, she will take away their annuity. And so in England, annuity means what annuity should mean in the US.
Right.
In other words, it's your pension. And so it just cracked me up, is they're always talking about annuities, but not the way we do. And they, they're not talking about riders or anything else. They present it as your lifestyle needs to be supported financially, and that's done through a series of payments and annuity. So I really think, yes, we need to think of creative ways to accumulate money on a tax advantage basis, and annuities do that. But for some odd reason, we emphasize that and don't emphasize enough what it does. What it does is it gives you this income you can't outlive.
No, absolutely true. I think the messaging, obviously I'm in front of the television, Steve, as you know, with my logos. But as I would say to the camera is, hey, you already own one lifetime income stream, which is called Social Security, which is the best inflation annuity on the planet. My question to you is, America, do you need more income? And it's really that simple. But we get caught up in the RILAs and the index annuities and the variable annuities. And I think that is a reflection of the commissions being high on those products. This is a very simple fix that will never happen. And I keep saying, if all commissions on all annuity types were the same and low, then the default would be for the advisor to point people in the right direction to the product that really solves the issue. The problem in our industry is it's driven by commission and complexity, whereas the majority of products that are really good and pro-consumer are simple. They really are. They just never hear about it.
And maybe a way of looking at it is back in the day when we had defined benefit plans, we didn't have a choice for what annuity we got. The employer told us. In other words, you worked hard and they told you they'd give you, 1% for each year that you worked, and that was the way it was. And okay, you didn't shop it. So really, and I said this, I think, in the last time we visited, but I've been talking about it being annuities being kind of a DIY DB, meaning do it yourself,
Sure.
defined benefit.
Absolutely.
So if you look at it as simply, okay, I've got Social Security and I no longer have a defined benefit plan, but I got this 401k pot of money. How do I create my own defined benefit plan?
Yep.
That way you're working backwards in a nice way. Well, what do you want to have for an income? When do you want to have it? And then you can work back, and we in the industry can say, okay, a good way to do it is to accumulate it this way or that way, or to have this feature or that feature. But you started with the end game of, I want an annuity, to use that English approach again.
There you go.
I want this income, and then work backwards.
I totally agree. Coming from the market side, where I work with Dean Woodard and Payne Weber, Morgan Stanley, UBS, worked at World Trade II Center for a while. So I've been on that side of the ledger. The securities industry has done a phenomenal job of convincing the public that, quote unquote, they have to have money in the markets. They have to have exposure to the markets. Regardless of age, you have to have potential growth. I really believe there's an argument for our industry to say you have to have contractual guarantees. You have to have lifetime income guarantees. I don't think it's an argument. And anyone that argues against that needs to read Wade Fowle's paper on how he destroyed the 4% rule, because that still proliferates. And for the people that don't know what that means out there, is when your advisor, master of the universe, wealth architect, whatever it says on their card, says, oh, by the way, you never have to buy a lifetime income annuity. We're just going to manage your money and just peel off 4% for your income needs. Well, that's fantastic in a raging bull market, but in the markets we're in now, not so much. So I know you're at the round table with all the really smart people where they don't announce where you guys meet and they fly you into, say, like Zurich. But around the round table, is there a concern that we're losing the messaging battle as an industry?
I think there is a concern that the consumer is listening to the parts of it that they want to listen to and ignoring the rest.
Yeah.
And so the 4% rule at this point has largely been discredited because, sure. I mean, still, it was never a rule. That's silly. It was kind of a finding. I like that term.
Yeah, I like that.
If you have the right situation, what you can do is take your accumulation and pull out 4% a year, adjust it every year for inflation, and given past history, that probably will take you out to age 95. Well, I made about 14 assumptions in saying all that. The challenge with that kind of thinking, and to answer your question, are we losing the message, is somehow you said, if it feels like it's saying, if you invest in equities markets, which go up, go down, but take out 4%, which is flat, somehow that all works. Well, that's simply not the way math is going to work.
No, you're right.
One is a variable account and the other one is a fixed one. Somewhere along the line, the car's going to break down, or could break down. Or the other thing is, maybe you take too little and you wasted your time. You could have done better.
What's I know you do a lot of work with annuities as a retirement solution, but what's right now for the people who've already retired, a lot of people that are listening to this what's keeping them awake at night that you're finding, and what are those solutions, and what should these people be thinking about?
Well, I think, as I said before, one of the things keeping awake at night is medical costs, but really that just translates to money coming out of their pocket. And if money comes out of their pocket, are they going to have enough in the future? I think the other part that goes with that is, when is the future? And so more and more they're looking at life expectancy. In fact, I know we talked about this last time, but that's another message that's being misunderstood. What was it, last week? They came out with a major thing on national TV that said people are living 2 years less than they did before. Completely misstating what's going on.
Right.
What that meant is, if you take the whole population and you add in COVID, gun violence and opioid addiction,
Sure.
that as a whole, life expectancies have shortened in just these last few years. It didn't really have a lot to do with retirees. Once you've gotten to, let's say, age 65, okay, your chances of getting in a gun battle are less, chances of getting opioid addiction are less. COVID, yeah, that went up, but that's hopefully more of a blip. The fact is, life expectancy for older people keeps going up. Certainly COVID affected it, but in general, it's going up. So I worry that people look and go, well, I'm going to get to my life expectancy, and they come up with numbers like 78, which is not your life expectancy for a retiree.
No.
But I'll just keep living till then, and then I'll wake up dead one morning. In other words, that's it. That's what I think keep them awake, is more and more they're realizing, no, my Aunt Ethel is, 98, has had dementia for 10 years and is in a nursing home. That costs money. Is that what's going to happen to me? I think that's really the big issue is, am I going to live too long, and am I going to lose my marbles, and what am I going to do about it?
I think people are afraid, the A personalities of the world are afraid that there will be cognitive issues, but you need to plan for that. I mean, it's just one of those things. For whatever reason, long-term care has been sold well to prepare for that. I think the cognitive side of it as well needs to be sold. And that's a lot of what I do as my edutainment thing, educator and entertainer, of trying to just strip all this down to what people are really, really thinking, and how annuities can be used contractually to give them the lifestyle that they've scrimped and saved and tried to achieve, and now they're here. I did a recent video called "You've Won the Game, Why Are You Still Playing?" Which is kind of going viral, which is, you're staying up at night worried about the markets, and you probably don't need to. Let's talk about annuities and how you are seeing them either being used properly or improperly. And when I say the word annuities, for people out there, for the people that say, I hate all annuities, that's like saying I hate all restaurants or I hate all shoes. There's many different types. I'm still to this day amazed by either the press or advisors that say never buy an annuity because if you die, they keep the money. And that's their take on it. I'm like, well, how in the world is that still valid out there, or being even, it's not valid, of course, but it's being said by credible people. I mean, as an industry, we really need a room that I oversee that's an attack room. It's kind of like the political attacks. When they say something, we come at them with facts. That needs to happen, truly, as an industry, and we could afford to do it. Don't know why all that. Again, I need to be czar of the annuity industry, Steve. I think we need to say. But getting back to my original,
see if we can arrange that.
Please do. Please talk to the grand poobahs and tell them that. But talk about annuities, how they're being used properly and improperly in your opinion.
Well, I think really that, in my mind, going back to the whole idea of an annuity, for the crown, at the end of the day, annuities really should be seen as an income source. And frankly, that's not always how they're packaged, because people don't always get that, but they do get, I'm making more money than Charlie is on my money. So right. It occurs to me that what people aren't understanding about annuities is the whole idea, and this is Wade Fowle says this, but the whole idea of a mortality premium. It's insurance, and people like insurance. They just don't like paying for insurance. So the whole idea is, if I'm planning for my retirement, and I say my life expectancy is 83 years old. Okay, fine. Does that mean I just plan for taking out enough money such that when I'm 83 years old, I run out of money? No, obviously, because you'd have to plan out to 95 or so, because you don't know how long you live. The insurance companies don't have that restriction. They take your money, my money, a bunch of other people's money, pull it all in, do a good job of investing it, because frankly, they have billions of dollars rather than thousands of dollars, and so they can be more creative in how they invest it. But they basically say, we'll start paying this out, and they do base it on your life expectancy, because one of you, and I hate to say between you and me who it is, but it's you, will die before life expectancy.
Yeah.
Because I'm speaking, so obviously I'm the one that's going to live longer.
Well, it's actually true. I lived pretty hard and ran pretty hard in college, so there's some scars there. So we'll just kind of see. But I'm actually betting on my wife.
There you
She's
go.
definitely going to outlive me for sure. There's an evil conspiracy there. So,
well, and when you have the floor, you can get even with me and say that, you know, I am older than you are, so how I'm going to die sooner. But my point being is somebody's going to die sooner.
right.
So the one that lives longer gets the mortality premium, as we call it. And so it's really insurance. And I know insurance is a real snoozer, but that's what you're doing. You're getting longevity insurance. The fact is that more of us worry or know about situations of people living too long rather than dying too soon. I mean, everybody drives up the hearse and says you need life insurance because, you know, I don't know, at 54, you suddenly die of a heart attack. But we know more people who, again, are in the retirement home and have dementia. So
sure,
I see annuities simply as longevity insurance. And to answer your question, why don't people just accept that? I suppose is one, what happens if I die too soon? Well, my answer to that is you truly think you're going to die too soon, buy some life insurance, kind of cover both sides. True. You know, a belt and suspenders. I think maybe the other one is control. You mentioned that, you know, you're in the game or you won the game, so why are you still playing? Is people spend a lifetime accumulating their assets. And so to hand it over to a big cold insurance company that you don't know and give it up, I think there is that reticence. My counter to that, though, is when you're retired, don't you really want to just go out on the links and golf or play with your grandkids and let someone else send you the payments rather than worry about it? But I think that's the other one, Stan, is they just hate to give up that control and that liquidity.
And my counter to that comment is you don't have to. At current interest rate levels with multi-year guarantee annuities, you can protect the principal, peel off the interest, never touch the principal, and live. So you don't have to buy an irrevocable contract. There's a lot of people out there, and annuities are math. This is just math. Yeah. And I always tip, okay, tell me about your investments. And, you know, let's look at the three principal protected products that are, let's just say CDs, treasuries, and MYGAs, multi-year guarantee annuities, for people who don't know who that is. That's a fixed rate annuity, just this annuity industry's version of a CD. But in essence, you can protect the principal and just peel off the interest. So let's just say at the time of this taping, you can average 4 to 4.5%, which you can in combination of those three products. Multiply that against your investable net worth, and tell me yes or no if that's enough income without you touching the principal. What I'm finding, Steve, is that a vast majority of people, that works for them. And at this point, I'm saying annuitization is always there for us, SPIAs, DIAs, QLACs. But let us have our hands forced to do that. Okay. Right. Especially if you're in your go-go years. Yes, you do need to annuitize going forward for the cognitive issues and the no-go stage of your life. But I think it's an excellent transition to go MYGA first, CDs, treasuries, then to an immediate annuity. I did a video called MYGA to SPIA, which I think is the baby boomer version of transitioning from accumulation to annuitization. You can't whack them all of a sudden and say, hey, you gotta buy this, and the money's gone, and then when you die, whatever leftover goes to your beneficiaries. That's hard. I think as an industry, we need to do transitional steps that still achieve the goal.
Yeah, and you make a good point in that way they still have control. So the ones that are in the go-go years of retirement and don't need all the money, they can feel better that they still have some control. And then the one thing, the dirty word we haven't talked about, which is really my background, is tax. You've got the huge tax advantage of that.
Don't say that. I haven't had my coffee yet. Come on.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk taxes.
Well, that's the thing that people don't always think about, especially your more, let's say, affluent people who aren't going to live paycheck to paycheck in retirement, is they're getting some really nasty surprises. I will admit I experienced as well, though I saw it coming, is the IRMA tax. What happens is people go, well, everybody pays the same for Medicare. Well, it's not true. It is means tested.
Sure.
So I pay about twice what other people do for my Part B Medicare, and it's because I'm on podcasts with Stan and still making money
Right.
for doing all these kind of things. And so I get hit with this tax. Well, the point I'm getting at is during those go-go years, not only are you going and seeing the grandkids and going to Disney World and all those kind of things, but also you are making money one way or another. You might be retired, but from investments and that kind of thing. And so it fuels up your modified adjusted gross income, and that causes some really ugly taxes. And I mentioned that, but there's also net investment income.
Sure.
There are other taxes that can hit you. My long way of saying, one of the beauties of annuities during the accumulation phase is they defer it. You're going to pay the piper at some point, but maybe it's not even you that's going to pay it. Maybe it's your kids when they inherit some of this, but it defers your income until the slow go years when you don't have as much income coming in and can afford to pay taxes because you're in a lower bracket.
Yeah, and people need to also realize that if you do transition either sooner or later to an immediate annuity, lifetime income stream, which is an irrevocable contract pension, there's no medical test. You're going to get guaranteed issue. It's primarily based on your life expectancy. So that's another reason that you could maybe do a MIGA to SPIA strategy, control the assets, etc. I want to bring up you hit me with a really bad word, which is taxes. That hurt. But I'm going to throw in one more at you that everyone seems to be aware of and afraid of, and it's inflation. I think that a lot of people complain about it that shouldn't. I've done videos on that. Stop complaining about inflation, especially if you have a large asset base, you're going to be fine. But for the 60% of Americans that have $400 in their checking account total, and that's all they have, they're getting hit hard. Or the majority of senior citizens that only have $10,000 to their name, these are the people that are getting hit hard by inflation. The rest of us, it's a moment in time. But with that being said, let's talk about your view on annuities and that I word, inflation.
Yeah, and I'd like to address it from two standpoints. One, the people that pay you the annuity, the insurance companies, how does this affect them? And two, at the consumer level, and I actually want to throw an idea at you and see what you think about it.
Sure, absolutely.
So at the insurance company, really, I just was recently asked by a reporter about that. In my mind, inflation, not crazy inflation, but the kind of inflation we have right now, actually is some ways more of a tailwind than it is a headwind for insurance companies. Because insurance companies are really good investors in bonds.
Yep.
And the fact is, as interest rates go up and as we see the rate be higher on bonds, that actually takes the insurance companies a little bit out of a hole and gives them more to work with. Second, that means that they can frankly be more competitive as compared to other investments, because the fact is, and you may have seen, there was a Canuck study that I think just came out last week or week before,
right,
that these insurance companies are paying something like 11% higher single premium immediate annuity payments now, simply because they're getting more return on their investments. So now, uncontrolled inflation is a horrible thing, and I'm not saying it's going to, if we just had this forever, it's a problem. But right now, the inflation is really kind of helping the insurance companies dig out of the hole a little bit. So do you agree with that from that standpoint?
I do. And it also reiterates what I always say is annuities are commodity products, regardless of type. And you have to shop for the highest contractual guarantees. As these companies reach capacity, as volume comes in, they'll lower those guarantees to adjust for that. Looking at the Fed, and everyone tries to watch the Fed and time the Fed. I always tell people with annuities, it's kind of a fool's game, because it has, yes, they do watch Chairman Powell at the time of this taping, who's the chairman of the Fed, but they're not fixated on him. They're fixated primarily on the tranche they're trying to fill, the dollar amount they're trying to raise, and their capacity. And if they reach it, they'll lower the guarantees regardless of what Chairman Powell's doing. In fact, at the time of this taping, we're previous to a red Fed rate hike, and the trend is companies are lowering their rates and guarantees just because the money's coming in so fast, it's hard for them to even process it.
Right. And so really, I mean, inflation, if it were like Germany in the early 20th century, that's a different issue. But frankly, I agree with you. For a lot of people, it's not that big a deal. And I will even put it in these terms. I did a QLAC, and I did it before some of this inflation hit. And so, for a second, I thought, well, was that a bad idea? Because the spending power of that was a guarantee.
Sure.
Is before inflation went up. And I thought, no, because really I have locked in a future income, and we don't know where income will be in the future. But the fact is, compared to other consumers, I do indeed know I will have a base floor of income. So inflation is there. It does affect spending power, but at the same time, it's nice to have something to spend, even if it diminishes a little. Let me throw my idea out at you.
All right, let's hear it.
Wade and I, Dr. Pfau, and I have a paper being published.
It's coming out in January,
Financial Planning that we're excited about. What we did is we looked at Social Security and this whole thing of should I take it now, should I take it in the future? And we can get into more of the details if you're interested, but the bottom line is, using Monte Carlo, using a number of different methodologies, we basically said, look, you really should, if you can afford to do it, delay Social Security. It almost always is going to come out ahead.
Interesting.
And you can challenge me on how we got that later, but the point that occurs to me, if it makes sense to always delay Social Security, then what do you do to fill in the gap in between? And it occurred to me how valuable annuities can come in that situation. And I don't mean necessarily even guaranteed annuities, but in other words, what you're doing is, I'll put it this way. A challenge for annuities, for annuity payouts, is that they are not sensitive to inflation. It's hard to, or you probably know, I imagine it's impossible by a true annuity payout that's has a CPI.
It doesn't exist. Listen, annuities do not address inflation perfectly. Annuity companies don't give anything away. They're not politicians with Social Security. So, for people that always say, what are we going to do about inflation? I said, well, nothing, because anyone that tells you they have an annuity that addresses inflation, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. And when you attach an increase, or if somebody says, well, if the index increases, the payment increases, the annuity company just simply drastically lowers the initial payment to make up for that. There's no magic to that. So, but I am interested a little bit on the carte blanche nature of 70 being the bogey. That doesn't always fit for people.
No, and I'll come to that, but I just want to throw out my point with the annuity is, because annuities don't have a CPI on them, actually they're perfect to fill in the blank until 70. So we'll go back to the 70, but what I'm getting at is why not wait to 70 if you can, and fill in the difference with things like annuities. And whether you annuitize it or you're just keeping it in MIGA, what I'm getting at is, let's say you go ahead and take an annuity, and I mean for life.
Sure.
The thing is, inflation bit by bit erodes spending power, but it's eroding spending power on your annuity maybe between age 62 and 70. So it's not cutting in totally. When you hit 70 and Social Security kicks in, that is your inflation rider. That's a thing where you're getting 8.7% type increases. Sure. And so what I'm getting at is, isn't that a good compliment? What you could do is use annuity strategies to really fill in the gap between when you could file for Social Security at 62 and when you should file it at 70, because it has all these advantages. The one minor disadvantage is it's not inflation sensitive, but that's only during that 8 years, and the Social Security takes over on inflation in your later years. Makes sense?
It does. And let me address a couple of things. The three ways to do what I call gap filling, income gap filling, would be a period certain immediate annuity for that specific time period, a lifetime income immediate annuity, or a MIGA, and just peel off the interest during that time period. Those would be the ways to do it. But I have a different take on inflation, how to and my clients, we go about it a different way. Inflation is personal and customizable, and everyone's situation is different. Give my example, my two daughters are out of the house. We're no longer doing dance classes. I'm no longer taking them back and forth. etc. We no longer buy milk, those type of things. What I tell people all the time is look at your income floor. And then if you need an increase because of whatever specific customized inflation's hitting you, then we reverse engineer an immediate annuity quote to solve for that specific dollar amount. Mm-hmm. So if you have a $5,000 income floor as an example, and 2 years from now, you say, you know what, it's really like 5,400 now, Stan. Okay, great. Let's do a reverse engineered immediate annuity quote solving for the 400. And if 7 years from now, if it's additional $200 more, we do the same thing. That is the real way that annuities address inflation. The other way, too, is what you have done, which is a QLAC, which is a qualified longevity annuity contract used in an IRA asset that you can earmark to turn on in the future. But if you really want to throw a dart at it and a rifle shot at it, is you're tracking your income on a monthly basis, and you're filling in the gap with an immediate annuity using the least amount of money to solve for that income gap. That's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going, because you can use annuities to do that gap filling. Mm-hmm. And that gets to your original question is, but not everybody wants to delay to 70. And if you don't want to delay to 70, don't delay. But what I'm saying is, as from an academic standpoint, we've crunched the numbers every which way from Sunday. And the fact is, delaying to 70, two things. One, delaying to 70 is going to make sense in the great majority of cases. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing, or I don't know if it's funny, but it's interesting, is that even if Social Security does cut what the trustees are saying, in about 11 years, you would have a 21% reduction if all things stay equal, which they won't stay. Well, even if that happens, it still generally makes sense to delay your Social Security. That's the thing that surprises people is, no, I better take it while I can because they're going to take it away. Well, one, I don't think they're going to take it away, but even if they dropped at 21%, it still made sense to wait until later. Right. But I need income. How am I going to get income? That was the answer you gave. There are so many different annuity solutions, and you're doing it during a period before the inflation is going to eat up the dollar. So I just think it's a nice compliment. I don't mean to be dogmatic about it, but I just think if people would realize Social Security is a great gift, but take it in the future, that's going to help a lot with flexibility in what you can do with annuities.
Getting back to my marketing brain, I can see the television commercials. Since all of you already own an annuity, because it's true, if you have a Social Security number, you already own one. And then dovetail into what the annuity industry can provide from a value proposition. Let's one more topic. I know that, man, I could talk with you forever. The 2023, I know it's hard to believe. It's coming up. It's there. New Year's beginning. What are some of the things to be watching out for in terms of like taxes and markets planning, things like that? Also, I want you, big question, talk about the Secure Act and the stretch IRA stuff, and then how annuities can help in this crazy changing environment that we live in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens this coming year, but we're still trying to sort through what happened to us back in theory in 2018 with the Secure Act. Let's just put the cards on the table. The Secure Act basically was Congress saying, you know what, annuities are a good thing. I really believe that, because what they said is we've got a crisis. And even though we're arguing about everything, this was back during the Trump administration, the one thing that they could agree on was we need to help people save more for retirement. And what did they do? Really, what they did is they put in features like more 401ks, making it easier to buy annuities. All those things were trying to bolster retirement. How did they pay for it? They took away the stretch annuity. Yes, the stretch IRA.
Stretch IRA.
In other words, those of us who had some affluence said, I'll just hold on to my IRA and give it to my kids. And then look at what a stretch IRA is. It's an annuity. In other words, Correct. You were able to pull it out over the lifetime of the decedent. You can't do that anymore. Essentially, they took away our toys and said, no, you have to do it over 10 years. So what I think is going to happen is we're going to see more of that. The Secure Act 2.0, at least as of the recording, Congress hasn't passed it yet, but it sure looks like they will. And in doing that, they're going to probably do things like make annuities even easier to use through work. They're going to probably stretch the RMD out to age 75, so you're not required to pull down your money. They're doing all these things to encourage retirement. And so where I was going with that is now you're going to have the tools available to save more for retirement. Why not use annuities as the way to get that second annuity? Your first annuity with Social Security, get the second one, because they're going to let you save more money. And I don't know why people don't use annuities more to pay out their retirements either as an SPIA or a DIA, but they should, because now they can save more. So do it. That's where I'm going with that. It helps. You need the annuity to make all those Secure Act changes positive.
You know why people don't do it. You know, Steve, all annuities are bad. All annuities are expensive. All annuities are in the agent's favor. You know, all the misinformation that's out there that's stuck in people's heads is amazing. I'm trying to, when we talk about, excuse me, when we talk about annuities, I'm trying to get people to understand that there's so many different types, so that when they come to us, we ask two questions. What do you want the money to contractually do? And when do you want those contractual guarantees to start? From those two answers, we can determine A, if you need an annuity at all, and B, which type is going to provide the highest contractual guarantee and provide the best contractual solution. So going into it, it might not be an immediate annuity. It might not be a QLAC. It might not be a MIGA. We don't know. It might not be an annuity in general. But I think there's the education that we're trying to provide out here is there's many different types. And that doesn't mean you need to own one. That doesn't mean you need to put all your money there. But, you know, I do think that we're making some headway as an industry, just because I think the demographic tidal wave of people that are a little bit tired of the markets and the volatility, even though people have told them that annuities are bad, they're looking. And these types of podcasts that aren't salesy, they're educating people on the value. When we have really smart IQ people like you on that are talking about it in a rational way, when I have Wade on or Moshe Milevsky or Michael Finka, I mean, and you, Mr. Steve Parrish, it validates the category. So, you know, I really appreciate, you know, you giving those words of wisdom. As I always do at the very end of the podcast is the mic drop moment, where I throw the microphone to you and you're going to wow us with a very, very succinct closing statement. So I'm going to I don't give any prep on that, but I'm going to count you down. So are you ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go, Steve.
Well, as I age and don't get any younger, I realize in talking to a lot of my friends that are baby boomers that I want to bet for you, not against you. And so when we talk about annuities, what I'm really getting at is chances are you're going to live a long, prosperous life. And so why not ensure that you financially can back up that long, prosperous life? I don't want to bet against you. Sure, bad things can happen, and that's why you get insurance. That's why you get the right Medicare. Maybe you buy life insurance and don't get rid of it when you retire. But what you really need for insurance is some kind of financial backing to back up the fact that I'm betting for you, not against you, and you're going to live a long life, and you need to back that up financially. That's why I just have this fascination with annuities. That's why, as a consumer, I've bought my own, and as an academic, we'll do the numbers all day and tell you things like QLACs make the most sense. But I get it. People like to control it. But people like you, Stan, are offering these alternatives that still get that long-term income, but some flexibility on the way up.
Well said. Do me a favor, and when you and Wade, I think it's coming out in a month or so. So that paper, please send us that link so we can share it with all of the listeners, et cetera, because they're going to email me about it in droves. I'm going to get 1,000 emails asking for it. So if you're listening to the podcast, wait a month and then send me the email. So we'll get it to you. But I want to thank every single person on all major podcast platforms that listen to this ever-growing podcast. I can't believe it's growing like it is. And I want to thank everyone on the Fun with Annuities YouTube channel that's watching our beautiful, mature faces talk about a very controversial topic. My name is Stan the Annuity Man, and I'll see you next time.